Welcome back to RamZland. We're learning about colloids, solutions, and suspensions. And I'm looking over here at your graduated cylinder. Jesus, can you tell me, is that a colloid, a suspension, or a solution there?
Suspension.
It's a suspension, and it looks like you've got something to add. Why don't you put some food coloring into that water there? And Jerome, why don't you swish that around a little bit? And we're gonna let that diffuse from a high concentration to a low concentration. That looks good. Okay, Jerome, let's see if that will be suspended over the vegetable oil, if that creates a suspension. Go ahead and pour it in there. You can kind of squeeze it together a little bit. Slowly. There you go.
Whoa.
That's good, and stop. Okay, and let's look at how that works. It looks like the blue isn't mixing with the red, is it?
No.
And what's on top there? What's that on top?
The oil.
That's vegetable oil. So in this case, we know this is it's a suspension because what's happening here? Why is it a suspension? It's not
dissolving.
It's not dissolving. Nice job. And over here, I've got table 1, and you guys have another one here. And it looks like, Izzy, you've got something to pour in there. Why don't you try it, Izzy? Let's see what happens with yours. Good job. Let's see if that's mixing, if it's dissolving. It doesn't look like it wants to dissolve, does it?
No.
What's that on top there, Joel?
Oil.
That's the oil that isn't mixing. So, Jocelyn, is this a colloid or a suspension?
Suspension.
This is a suspension. Good job. Okay. And here we are with Corbin, and he's going to demonstrate the difference between a solution and a colloid. It looks like you've got Pepsi here and whole milk. And Corbin, which one's the colloid?
The milk.
The milk. And which one's the solution?
The Pepsi.
The Pepsi. And we want to see if by adding acid to milk, if we can separate the colloid. And we know there's acid in Pepsi. So Corbin, why don't you fill that up with some milk and let's see what happens. Get as much in there as you can. Keep going. You're doing great, Corbin. And we're gonna remove this wrapper here so we can see what's going on in here. Keep going, you're doing great. Okay, let that run down. You can shake it a little bit there. Shake out that, there you go. All right, now put the cap on. And Corbin, what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this sit, and we're gonna come back to this after we use our centrifuge, and we're gonna see how that colloid separates out into its parts. Now, Yaneli, we know that milk has, what are some ingredients in milk?
Water.
Water's in milk, so we should see some clear water in here. What else, Jillian, is in milk? Other than water?
Fat.
Fat. There's a lot of, yeah, so if we look on our label here, you can see that there's quite a bit of fat in milk.
There's iron in
It
it.
says here, calories from fat, 70 calories out of 150. So we should see some fat that separates out from this colloid. And we'll check on that in just a couple minutes. And it looks like over here we have some people with test tubes. And in your test tube, you've got sand and water, so we know that's a suspension, right? And you're gonna separate that suspension using a centrifuge. Why don't you shake up your test tubes? Shake them up. Try to dissolve that sand best you can. Let me see what you're doing there. That looks good. Okay, and now put your test tubes in the centrifuge. Good. And Tyler, start turning the crank there. And we should see that the denser particles in the suspension are forced outward toward the curve of the centrifuge. And what kind of force is that? That forces particles outward toward a curve. What kind of force is that? Do you remember what that's called? Centripetal?
Yes.
Centripetal. So keep turning it, a little faster. Good, okay, stop. Wait for it to stop on its own, don't grab it. Okay, now, slowly take out your test tube and you should see your denser particles, the sand, Where? At the top or at the bottom? Oh, hold that up, Jalen. All the denser particles are down there at the bottom. Look at Hannah's. Good. Look at Dora's.
Look at the scenes.
Good. Looks like the centrifuge separated the sediment, the sand, from the suspension. All the sand is on the bottom. And Tyler, why is it on the bottom? Which is denser, water or sand? The sand is denser. Good. And now we're going to look at our high-speed centrifuge. And now we're going to look at separating a suspension with a high-speed centrifuge. And you've got your sand that's dissolved in your water there. Shake it up and add your test tube to the centrifuge. Come on up. There you go. Good job. Come on up, Jalen. There you go. Go ahead, Christian. You're doing great. There you are. Good job, Izzy. Rachel, yep. And we want to see if we can separate that sand from the water. There you go. You're doing fine. Need some help? This one didn't go all the way. There we go. There we go. Okay. Shh. Excellent. And next one. There you go. That's great, Dora. Okay, now let's check and make sure that they're all evenly in there. We've got a few. I need 3 more people. Come on up here, Jerome. Giselle and Mary, come on up here. Add another test tube with sand. Let's put a couple more suspensions in there to separate, because when you run a centrifuge, it's got to be evenly balanced.
It has to?
Yes. There we go. Let's push that all the way in. That's good. Okay, one more. Come on in, Jerome. That's great. Now, Jerome, let's check it. Are they in all the way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Looks good. Okay, and back up. Jerome, go ahead and flip the switch there. Over here. Turn that. There you go. And you can see it spinning there. And turn it up one more notch. There you go. Now make sure you don't stick your finger in there, because it won't come out the same. Now once it gets going like that, we'll close the lid here for safety. And you can see the centrifuge is spinning your test tubes around. And it's forcing the sand toward the outer end of the test tube, toward the bottom of the test tube. Okay, Jerome, you can start turning it down. There you go. Let's check. Go ahead and turn it off.
Oh, no.
Okay, don't touch it till it comes to a complete stop. There you go. Slowly, not yet. No, wait.
Come on, man.
Okay, draw one out. Let's look at the test tube and see if the sand has been separated. Yeah, there's the sand at the bottom. Let's look at another one.
That one will let me get one.
Let's look at another one. Let's hold that up there, Rachel. Oh, yeah, definitely separated. Good, and this is using our high-speed centrifuge to separate out a suspension. Nice job. Okay, so you've seen, if we wanted to test our water with a centrifuge, we might fill a test tube like what you have there with tap water, right? And if we put our tap water in our centrifuge, would you want to see lead or copper sulfates at the bottom of that test tube?
No.
No, you'd want it to be absolutely clean, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go home and follow some of the news stories about the water in Flint, Michigan, if they centrifuge the water in Flint, Michigan, you would not believe what they're seeing at the bottom of their test tube. The water is literally not safe to drink.
How come?
And so this is a good way to test how pure your water is, by putting it in a centrifuge. Now let's look at how much sand you've got in there. Yeah, could you imagine if that was in your drinking water?
I would fill up.
Yeah, that would be dangerous. 4th graders learning about colloids, suspensions, and solutions. Nice job today.